The airplane trembled in midair, alarms blaring in the cockpit. A baby cried, passengers gasped, and the captain's voice came through calm but urgent. "Ladies and gentlemen, if there's any experienced combat pilot on board, we need your help." All eyes darted around. Row 10, Seat B. A man in a cheap janitor's uniform stirred from his sleep. A mop handle leaned against his leg, still wet from his night shift. His head slowly lifted, revealing tired eyes and a face worn by years of sacrifice. No one knew that this quiet janitor once flew through fire, not just in the sky, but in life. And what happened next would leave the entire world stunned. It was a morning flight from Denver to Washington. The cabin smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air. Most passengers were professionals, suited, hurried, tapping away on laptops. But Daniel Cross didn't belong among them. His hands were calloused, his shirt slightly faded, and his boots told stories of long shifts cleaning hallways when the world was asleep. He worked as a janitor at a small community airport, barely making enough to raise his 6-year-old daughter, Lily. Her picture was tucked inside his pocket, her missing front tooth shining proudly in a photo he always looked at when things got tough. He wasn't supposed to be on this flight. A last-minute ticket, paid for by his night supervisor, who said, "Go, Dan. Your girl's got her school play. She deserves to see her dad in the front row for once." So, Daniel boarded, carrying nothing but a backpack, a lunchbox, and a heavy silence. He found his seat in row 10, middle of the plane, middle of nowhere, and fell asleep before takeoff. What no one knew was that, years ago, Daniel wasn't a janitor. He was Captain Daniel Cross, U.S. Air Force, a combat pilot with over 300 flight missions. A man who once danced with death above enemy skies. But tragedy grounded him. His wife, Emma, died of cancer while he was overseas. He returned home to an empty crib, unpaid bills, and a daughter too young to understand why Daddy cried at night. So, he walked away from the Air Force, not because he was weak, but because he wanted to be present for the one person who still needed him. He traded cockpits for mops, medals for rags, and silence for survival. And now, high above the clouds, fate was about to test him again. Airplane: the crisis. 2 hours into the flight, turbulence hit, sudden and violent. The seatbelt signs blinked red. Drinks spilled. Passengers screamed. A sharp voice came over the intercom, Captain Owens, the pilot. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. We've lost hydraulic pressure in our main system. We're attempting to stabilize." Then a second voice, quieter, panicked. It wasn't meant to go through the speakers. "Owens, we're losing control of the right aileron." The plane lurched sideways. Overhead bins burst open. Children cried. A woman prayed. Daniel's eyes opened instantly, instincts snapping back like a coiled spring. He looked toward the cockpit door, then at the terrified flight attendants trying to stay composed. The intercom cracked again. "If there's any combat pilot or anyone with flight training on board, we need your help immediately." Silence. Everyone looked around. No one moved. Daniel exhaled slowly. His hands trembled as memories flooded back, the smell of jet fuel, the deafening roar of engines, his call sign, Falcon 3. He stood up. "Move aside," he said quietly. A flight attendant tried to stop him. "Sir, please stay seated." Daniel held up his old Air Force ID, still tucked behind his driver's license, faded, but unmistakable. "Not today," he said. "You need me." Daniel entered the cockpit, a space that felt like home and heartbreak all at once. The captain looked up, pale and sweating. "You're a pilot?" Daniel said. "Until life grounded me." The co-pilot's seat was empty, the officer had blacked out from a head injury when the plane jolted. Daniel slid into the seat, his hands automatically finding the controls. The instruments flickered erratically. He whispered to himself. "All right, old bird, let's see if we still speak the same language." High voltage, the fight for control. Wind screamed outside as the aircraft dropped several hundred feet. Daniel worked fast, recalibrating, rerouting hydraulics through secondary systems. His calm voice filled the cockpit, guiding the trembling captain. Below, passengers clung to each other. Lily's photo, tucked in Daniel's pocket, pressed against his heart. He stabilized the roll, eased the nose up, and whispered, "Not today. I've lost too much already." Minutes felt like hours. Finally, the clouds cleared. Washington lay ahead, distant but reachable. Daniel maneuvered the plane toward a manual landing, something few commercial pilots had ever practiced. Collision the landing. Emergency services lined the runway. The landing gear was only half deployed. The captain shouted, "We can't land like this." Daniel replied, steady and sure. "We don't have to land perfect. We just have to land alive." He angled the plane, touched down hard, sparks erupted as metal scraped asphalt. The jet skidded, screamed, and finally stopped. Silence. Then applause. Cries. Relief. Dove aftermath. The door opened. Passengers poured out, shaken but safe. Daniel stayed behind, wiping sweat from his brow, staring at the clouds through the cockpit window. A little boy walked up to him, eyes wide. "Mister, were you the pilot?" Daniel smiled softly. "Just a janitor," he said. "But I used to fly." Red Heart Epilogue. The next day, headlines across the nation read, "Janitor saves 187 lives, former Air Force pilot hidden among us." Daniel didn't chase fame. He went home quietly, where Lily ran into his arms. "Daddy, did you fly again?" she asked. He hugged her tightly. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just one last time." And that night, for the first time in years, Daniel looked up at the stars not as a man who fell from the sky, but as one who rose again. Dizzy final message. Sometimes, the world forgets your worth. But destiny never does. You may fall, you may break, you may end up cleaning the floors of dreams you once owned. But when the moment calls, your wings will remember how to fly.